Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. Now, German filmmaking is really on a roll again at the moment, and one of the outstanding directors here in recent years has undoubtedly been today's guest on the show, and he is Andres Veiel. Andres, thank you very, very much for joining us today on Talking Germany. Now, Andres won international praise for his documentary film Black Box BRD, which probed deep into the heart, the dark heart of German terrorism. Now he's working on his first full-length feature, and the subject is German terrorism. I asked myself, is he an obsessive? Well, we can look forward to discussing that question. So let's begin with that question that I was promising our viewers. Are you an obsessive?
Well, the question is, there's a necessity, yeah? A necessity to find something in my own history, in my own biography, in terms of the past, in terms of the present, and this necessity needs to find out something, and so this is part of my work, to find out, to have questions, to go into it, to dig, not only in the history, but also in the present, to find answers, and I think in the very end to be astonished.
Astonished.
Yeah? Astonished in terms of finding out that the world is so much different than we imagine it is. Yeah.
It's a pretty extreme project, though, that you're engaged in when I look at your work. And I found a quote from you. You say that what interests you most are open wounds.
Yeah, it's a chance. If you go into a wound, you find something of the body. You find something which is normally closed. And so the wound is a chance not only to test the circulation, to try what is in terms of the heart or the intestines, and also how it works. So what are the functions of the body? So you have to go into the wounds, otherwise you're just on the surface.
Andres, let's go back to you as a very young man. Yeah, in your late teenage years, I'm guessing, sort of 1975 to 1977, you went across Stuttgart, from the part of Stuttgart that you lived in, to the Stammheim prison, to the trials of the members of the Baader Meinhof gang. That must have shaken you up.
Yeah, it was a very crucial event for me. Before I was in a conservative party, youth organization, Junge Union, and I went to the Stammheim trial of Gudrun Ensslin, Andreas Baader, Baader Meinhof, this terrorist generation, the first one. And something struck me. It was their fight and their willingness to give up something in their lives, maybe the life itself, for another world. This German idealism in a very total way. And I felt myself like a coward, somebody who is not willing to sacrifice anything. So I felt very little, and I was admiring this necessity to change something. But at the same time, I felt I won't be a terrorist. So it was strange for me, the language, this language full of concrete. There's a black and there's a white, no ambivalence. Here's the enemy, there's the fight for the revolution. So it was also something which was very limited. But I think the first 2 or 3 months when I went to the trials, it was like an opening for me for another world, for a world beyond this very limited German suburb socialization. And so it was his first step into something, and now I'm making films on it.
It's really a statement from a very typical German post-war biography that you're telling me here. When you take the German post-war period, if you can divide it up crudely, I suppose, into the men who went and fought in the Second World War, who fought in Hitler's war, and then there were their children, their sons and their daughters, who were very angry with their fathers for having fought in that war, and maybe their mothers for being complicit in all that. Where do you fit into all that?
In my family, it was very complex. On the one hand, my grandfather was a general in the Russian war. A general. So there was a high responsibility. My father even was an officer. But at the same time, my grandfather, he was sentenced to death because he was against Hitler in the very end. So it was a mixture between being...
Was he executed as well?
No, that's the interesting point. For some reason, he could escape. So it was a very strange camouflage of partly being a victim, partly being perpetrator. And I think that was the curiosity to go into this complexity. Of course, I was angry at the very first time. Why? The idea was, of course, I would like to have a resistant fighter in my family and not a general who was responsible. But I remember interrogations with my father. I wanted to know.
Interrogations.
It was really, yeah. It was not just question and answer.
You interrogated him.
I interrogated him because I felt there is a responsibility. He was officer in war, and I went to archives. I said, "Listen, look, this is the place. Here, the Jews, 5,000 were killed in this city."
Andres, let me just ask you: how old were you when you began?
18, 19. It was after the RAF trial in Stammheim. I started to ask all these questions, and I was prepared. So it was an interrogation because I could tell him, listen, you said you had, this was the place in Russia where you're fighting. So 10 kilometers away, the same period, the SS came and killed 5,000 of Jews. So did you listen to the MG, to the fire of the firing squads? Did you hear it, or was the noise of your tanks was too loud? So it was somehow cynical because he said, you don't dare to ask me. You doesn't know what it means to be in a war. So it's not just a game. It was the question of survival. If I don't kill them, they kill me, things like that. And at the same time, he was proud. He was very successful. And he said the first years of war was like a journey at the expense of Adolf Hitler, a journey all over Europe. So, of course, he was provocating me with a sentence like this.
Okay. You responded by going on to explore German history. You made one movie, Black Box BRD, about the terrorist scene here in Germany. Let's have a clip, a quick look at a clip, and I'd like you to tell us about your latest movie, what we're actually seeing here. There we go.
This is a fiction film about Gudrun Ensslin, and shall I explain it now, or we have
You've got Gudrun Ensslin. This is the woman we're seeing here.
Yeah.
And what's happening in this scene?
That's a marriage scene, engagement, in fact. And you see, it has nothing to do with terrorism. So I start in the 60s earlier. I'm not interested to tell again and again what it means, the RAF period, but what are the roots? What are the sources? Where does it come from? So I start when you can call it an innocent period in the early 60s. Nobody was talking about revolution. Germany, the Eichmann trial took place, so it was very, you could call it innocent, and everything was possible. And by chance, it could, the characters could develop not to terrorism, not in the direction of violence, but also to be people like you and me.
Okay, so the themes we're looking at here are innocence, idealism, and violence. Violence is something that's talked about in society, talked about in German society at the moment, for sure. And there are certainly those who say that with a lot of violence around, that youngsters, especially young boys, would be well advised to find out how best to defend themselves against violence. Now, in the Berlin district of Neukölln, here in Berlin, some of those kids are getting assistance from a former criminal. Andres, those kids, at least some of them, when you listen to what they're saying, they are learning how to hit back, not to run away. What do you say to that? Do you approve of that?
Well, I have a son. He's now 12 years old, and he made similar experiences in Kreuzberg, not Neukölln, but it's another suburb.
What kind of experiences?
Of violence in school.
So he has been mugged, as we say in English.
Well, we changed the school. So the first year he was in a school where violence was an everyday experience, and some kids, not him, but other kids, one little boy was smashed, the face full of blood, and 6 years old, the kids around who did it. So we said, okay, there's a limitation. We said we have to change the situation and find another school. And now he makes karate, and so he gets some sort of self-consciousness, self-confidence, and so I think it's a possibility, at least, to say or to give the signal to people, to young people who attack him. Okay, listen. You risk something. If you do this, you risk I will hit back. And
that's a risk in itself, though, isn't it? You're sending the signal that you may be up for the fight.
Yeah, but I think the biggest problem is to be a clear victim. Then you offer it. Exactly. And if you have something, this strength in the body, your partner who want to fight you or to beat you up, he knows, okay, he gets into a zone of risk. And I think this is the best self-defense, because then you know, okay, it's on the same level. I'm not the loser.
Let's talk about an aspect of this. An aspect of what we just saw in the report is that if you listen to media reports in Germany, then you could come to believe, for better or for worse, that a lot of the perpetrators of violence, of youth violence, are members of the young immigrant community here in Germany. But in that report, nearly all of those kids, as far as I could tell, they're victims of violence. That's how they see themselves, and they are members of the immigrant community. I know you've given this a lot of thought, these kind of issues.
Yeah. I think it's a general question. Look to the area outside Berlin. There are no foreigners, no immigrants, and you have a lot of violence too. So it's a question of the possibilities to get some sort of the experience of success, of the ability to learn something, the chances to get a job. And if you have only the experience of humiliation, of having no chances to enter into the realms of jobs, of qualification, you get a lot of frustration. And in the parts of Brandenburg, you have this typical shoes of the right-wing scene. You have this haircut.
The kind of Doc Martin boots.
Yeah, that's it. And so if I just put on these shoes, I know I'm walking on the sidewalk and people are coming and they change to the other side. And this is this very little moment of intimidation, which gives me, having these shoes, a feeling of strength. And of course, these subtle moments of violence, and they are connected to humiliation and to exclusion of all these chances to be part in a job, etc., etc. So we have clear social conditions for the violence.
It's interesting. Andres Veiel living in the streets of Berlin, in a real inner city district, and being so fascinated with the themes that you are, with violence and disorder.
Well, I live in Kreuzberg. I have to tell the people they think we can go to Berlin. It's a very safe city.
True.
One of the safest cities in the world. So I don't make karate every day.
Okay. But I was going to say, it is ironic that you are so fascinated by all these things, because you come from a part of Germany. You can't hear it, folks at home, but Andres has a little bit of an accent, a Swabian accent. He comes from Swabia in Germany's southwest. It's a place that's normally associated with sort of neatness and tidiness. It's fascinating to hear Andres speaking about his preoccupations. Anyway, there is a big Swabian community here in Berlin. Andres, I've been to Swabia many times. I've been, places like where you come from, Stuttgart and Mannheim, and the people are very friendly. The food and the wine is very, very good. But when I read...
What about sauerkraut?
Sauerkraut, I love sauerkraut. But when I read about Swabia, the one thing that everybody mentions time and time again is this idea of the Kehrwoche.
Yeah,
explain for our foreign viewers what the Kehrwoche is all about.
You have to see it's ethnographical, because it's
ethnographical.
Because it's something very specific, but it will die out. But still, it exists, and it means you have to clean. You have not only to clean your apartment, but once a week you get a little plate on your door of your apartment, and the landlady says, "Now it's your turn to clean the stairway, to clean the basement, to clean all the front area of the house." and she will look at it if it's really clean, and if not, she will ring the bell and say, listen, look in the corner, there's still some dust. So this is the Swabian. Well, I think they fear the dirt because the dirt is death, and they are very afraid of death. Maybe this is the background. We don't want to get into the psychoanalysis of the Swabian, but Kehrwoche, it's a very specific moment. Maybe that's the reason why so many people Swabian people escaped to Berlin. And
300,000 of them have run away from the Kehrwoche to Berlin.
If you go out of the house, there's a lot of dog shit, and you have to jump in the morning. You have to dance between the piles, and so there's no Kehrwoche.
Okay, we got the idea. Swabians are hardworking. They're industrious. True.
Look at Porsche and Daimler-Benz. So this is the cliché of the engineer who discovered something and who makes a big money out of it.
Okay. Swabians like to count their pennies. They're miserly. I can ask you this question because my mother comes from Scotland, and people are always saying the Scots are miserly,
yeah? Well, they are not greedy, but they know how to invest. And of course, you have a lot of tragedies. If they lose everything, then they are lost. But they know how to deal with money, yes.
Okay, really quickly, 3 famous Swabians.
Hölderlin, of course. First of all, then of course Gudrun Ensslin. Let's mention also Schiller. Then we have the balance.
No, Jürgen Klinsmann.
You see, I'm not topic. I'm not really current.
He's not a big football fan. Let's find out a little bit more about Andres in our Talking Germany quiz, with which we close the programme. Some quick questions, quick answers, please, Andres. Spätzle or Bratwurst?
I am, of course, for Spätzle.
There he is. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Swabian after all. Berlin or Stuttgart?
Still Berlin.
With all the dog muck. Turn the other cheek or fight back?
Fight back.
A real filmmaker's question now. Truth or legend?
I think you find the truth in the legend.
Violence is part of the human condition, or violence is something we can overcome?
It's part of the condition, but we have to deal with it.
On that very philosophical note from Andres Veiel, the filmmaker, I hope you've enjoyed his company as much as I have. If you have, do come back next week. Tschüss.